know that there is someone doing something similar tomorrow, one of our former GFAN speakers and colleague and activist within GFAN Africa and GFAN more broadly, Solange Nueko, who may also be joining us today and listening in for comments or suggestions. And hi, Vitaly, I see that you've joined from the other call. Thank you so much. We're just getting underway here. So with Vitaly having had a chance to join us, we're going to let him have a second to take a deep breath. And now my headphones have stopped working, right?
Katie, we could still hear you the entire time, so. So I don't think Katie can hear us, but we could still hear her. So it's Tara from GFAN. I'm just kind of.
Can you hear me now, Tara?
Yeah, we could hear you the entire time.
And I can't hear you. This is exciting. I'm going to type in the chat and then I'll rejoin.
Okay. So Katie, we can hear, she can't hear us. I'm having trouble with this. So Vitaly, if you want to go ahead, absolutely start us off, and then I will try and connect with Katie so that she knows that. I'm
going to ask Vitaly to get started with his reflections from last week, and then I am going to get off and try and sort this mess out and hopefully not do this to all of you for the rest of this call. So my apologies, I am not clear what's happening. So I'll be back.
Yeah. Thank you, Katie, although you're not hearing me, but yeah, and hi, everyone. So I was asked to just give a general overview of how the Partnership Forum for ECOLAC went without going into details of the recommendations. And I hope that somebody else from those two regions or from outside of the region who participate in the Partnership Forum can also add. So the discussion in the Partnership Forum was mainly in the breakout groups, in smaller breakout groups. And it's really important to have a clear idea of what each of those groups, breakout groups, is about. So on the participant website for the Partnership Forum, everyone who signed up and have been confirmed to participate in the Partnership Forum should have received a link to event page of those particular forums. And in the website, on the website of the forum, there is a section called Topic Booth. So these topics booth have several, there are several topic booths on different topics. For example, adapting to a changing environment, dealing outcomes against HIV or against malaria or against TB. Then there is a topic booth, so-called topic booth, equity, human rights, gender, and key and vulnerable populations, and so on and so forth. So there are, I think, in total about 10 of them. So it was quite hard to find out who of the participants that we already knew will be in which topic booth. So it's really important for everyone to familiarize themselves directly to their own breakout groups. So all questions that will be asked in the breakout groups and the background information in the for the particular breakout groups is posted on the Partnership Forum participants website under topic booth. So you click and you go further on. So it's one thing. Then facilitator will guide the discussion along the questions that are that are already developed for the breakout groups. The questions they can follow it verbatim, like question by question, or they can follow like in more generic or consolidated way. But you will get the gist what they will be asking about. And now, as all of us, I mean, civil society participants have already discussed several times the issue that we want to bring to the partnership forum. It's really important that all the questions, all the issues that we posted or that we developed in our own consultations and for our statement that we already posted before partnership forum, it's important that those statements are repeated in the partnership forum throughout different breakout groups. So you go into breakout group, you see what is the agenda, what are the questions, you compare to your own documents, to your statements, if you have statements from your region, from your organization, and so on. This is the second. So first, familiarize with the breakout group. Second, prepare to participate in the breakout groups, to bring the message that already has been discussed in your own region or in your own organization. And I think it's the third topic or the third item I wanted to bring here is it's impossible to know who will participate in the partnership forum and actually in the breakout groups until very last moment. So but it's kind of important to know, but it would be useful to know who, at least from the civil society, will go to there. So try to find out not only in your own networks or your own partnership organization, but beyond usual suspects, because it might come to this that participants in your particular breakout groups might be not familiar with the issue that you are trying to bring to the discussion. And in some of the breakout groups I was participating, we kind of ended up arguing between each other, between civil society, rather than pushing together for a particular issue. So try to find out who will be in the partnership forum in your particular breakout groups beforehand, and kind of send out all the statements that you have already developed and that you have access to your peers. And then finally, the ECALAX forum, for my sense, mainly was about civil society participations. There were, of course, people from the government, from maybe from private sector, but it's mainly the discussion was dominated by civil society, which might be as well. Okay, we were lucky in the sense to bring our message. So I don't know about the other two partnerships fora in Africa, MENA, and Asia Pacific, MENA. So it might be also very good for you to find out or to try find out who from the government or from other stakeholders will be there to kind of bring your message as well. And the final note, in the end of the partnership forum, the Secretariat, with the help of rapporteur, will try to find out, to come up with a general summary of the whole discussion. So we had the discussion in 3 days, and we ended up with one slide. Of course, there will be a longer report, but the final slide was just the final summary was just one slide, and it's for our taste, or for my taste, and those who I was talking to, the final summary was kind of washed down, very diplomatic, and didn't bring all the message, all the idea of necessity to work on, for example, human rights, to rethink the approach to the to transition, which was a very important issue for our two regions of ECA and LAC. So the final slide was very diplomatic, and of course, it might be very hard to come up with a message that would be satisfactory to all partnership forum participants, but at least in our remarks in the civil society participants' remarks, after we saw this final slide, we also re-emphasized the importance of those issues that we already have been talking prior and during the partnership forum. So those would be my notes, my remarks in general about the partnership forum as it went for ECA and LAC. And I see some other folks here who have been already, so maybe they want to also to jump in, for example, Serge or other. Thank you.
Thank you, Vitaly. And again, everyone, sorry for my technical issues at the beginning of the call that made it miserable for everybody else. I'm hoping that this is a little bit easier. I'll keep my video off for this call. I know that Andrei from the Developing Country NGO delegation is also trying to join us, but I know that there's a few of you, as Vitaly said, Sergey, Elizabeth, Cynthia, and Sylvie, I think, who were at the forum. So I would open it to those of you who were at the forum last week to add any comments or suggestions that you might have for participants of the next two partnership forums around, you know, how to maximize participation, but also to raise any questions or points that you think should be taken forward through the other partnership forums in specific conversations or in some of the general, either the breakout groups that people are assigned or the topic booths that people can, I think, drop into. I myself have not participated in one that's coming this week. But so Sergey, Elizabeth, Cynthia, or Sylvie, if you could, I'm sorry, I'm trying to do this from my phone and it's a little bit challenging on its own, but I see Sergey, Sylvia, and Cynthia's hands raised, so we'll go in that order. So Sergey, and then Sylvie, sorry, and then Cynthia.
Okay, hi everyone. I fully agree with what Vitaly said, and I would like to add two things. First of all, I've been really frustrated not to capture in detail what the other subgroup has discussed and their recommendation in details. But another thing is that during the discussion, we raised both strategic and operating questions. And finally, we concentrate only on strategic issue, and I hope that it will be possible to also go back to the operational issues that we raised, because it's also really interesting to highlight the strategic point with some operational questions that has been discussed, and I would like to keep this in mind and to keep the list of all these operational modalities that have been raised by during the discussion. But it was really a very interesting discussion, no doubt about that. For people like, for example, me from Friends of the Global Fund Europe, it's a bit difficult because we are not implementers in the country, so we have a different view about transition, about the changing environment and global security, for example. But it was quite difficult to jump into the discussion because we are not implementers and we don't know very well the context of the country context. But it was really, really great discussion. So thank you to all the participants, to the subgroups. Thank you very much. That's all. Over.
Thanks, Sylvie. Sergey?
Yeah, thanks a lot, guys, for your reflections, and Vitaly for giving us an overview of what the mechanics of participating in a partnership forum was, and the recommendations for the other regions for how to maximize connections with other participants to basically advocate for the same set of issues I think it's really valuable to organize yourselves in advance and to plan for participation in specific, booths, as they call them, or in breakout groups to advocate for your key messages and expectations from the Global Fund strategy. I agree with Vitaly that the summary slide that was presented at the very end of the Latin America and Eastern European Partnership Forum was quite uninspiring, and I felt like it was a recycle of what we heard many times. And I understand that it might have been really challenging to be able to produce multiple, to produce a slide based on multiple conversations so quickly. But it's not just the language that was unambitious and lacking sort of strategic sense of direction going forward for the Global Fund. I do feel it was not clear from that. I didn't feel like the slide really zeroed in on some of the key concerns that were coming up, such as the strategic role of addressing the human rights barriers. It was not only sort of clearly indicated as one of the absolutely key barriers to the Global Fund's ability to deliver on its mandate. The conversation also contained quite specific recommendations for how the Global Fund could expand and improve and strengthen the human rights pillar in its work going forward. And that did not come through clearly in the summary slide. The other strategic area which clearly came up is about the mandate of the Global Fund going forward. And Harley Feldbaum did an interesting online sort of survey of the participant, where one of the questions was about whether the Global Fund needs to stay fully focused on the 3 diseases only, or should the Global Fund's mandate be expanded broadly. And there was another option where the expansion of the mandate was very limited, and the focus would continue being on the 3 diseases, but that answer, it was a 3 choices for your answer to pick from. The middle choice of keeping the focus on the 3 diseases but expanding as needed to enhance the response to the 3 diseases, I think it got quite a bit of support from the participants of the survey. But how to do that? Like, that is a strategic question for all of us, especially in the context of COVID. And again, that summary slide didn't really go into the into this strategic area for how the Global Fund can preserve its mandate yet be in sync with an undeniably changing environment in which we all have to adapt to COVID, as well as to prepare for other imminent pandemics. So I'll stop here for now, but happy to share more.
Thanks, Sergey. Cynthia?
Yeah, I totally agree with what Sergey has just mentioned, that it wasn't groundbreaking, but I think that there were a few wins in the summary of the recommendations that came out. And one is, in my opinion, specifically on keeping the focus of the Global Fund on TB, HIV, and malaria, because it's something that came out in the two working groups that I was part of, was the need to finish the fight with these diseases instead of adding more to the portfolio. And then in that sense, focusing on the three diseases and ending the fight for the three diseases to work towards health systems integration. And I think that something else that was good was, in fact, that at least in my working groups, was there was a strong mention to enhance and invest in communities and civil society participation, and centering this strategic plan in this strategy in the communities and their needs. One criticism that I have is, that I would like to share, is that for the Latin America working groups, there were very few people. And I understand that the Partnerships Forum should have a sort of criteria to have smaller groups talking. But at one point, there were, like, in the two of my groups, there were only 3 people participating. And we had to basically, there was not a lot of comment for the time that was allocated, considering there were only 3 people plus the Global Fund people who weren't participating, and plus the interpreter. There were one of them, there were more interpreters than people participating in the group. So I think that's something that was really not encouraging in terms of the discussions. We needed more experts to talk about. One of the groups that I was market shaping, and they were really good. The discussions were really good. We were talking about the importance of the Global Fund in terms of finishing these 3 diseases, the fight of the 3 diseases, and the need for a vaccine for TB, HIV, and malaria, how quick a vaccine for COVID was developed. But there was a lack of, there should be more people who are experts in these areas, in market shaping and health system integration, to sort of complement the discussions. And having only 3 people at the last day, we ended most of the working groups ended half an hour before it was supposed to, or 20 minutes before it was supposed to. So I think that's something that needs to be worked on, and ensuring more participation, at least from the Latin America groups.
Thanks, Cynthia. And then over to, and I'm very excited to introduce this next person, who I don't know who it is, but OIE, could you introduce yourself? Or maybe we'll recognize your voice as soon as you begin speaking, but I've been trying to guess who you are.
Good morning, I'm Olive Edwards from Jamaica, and I can endorse what was just said about the low participation of, maybe it could be civil society, because most of the persons who were in the groups were Global Fund or some implementers of, or funders of the Global Fund in the regions. So there weren't that many community persons for the groups. And it's when it shows up more when we were in the breakout groups.
Okay, no, that's really helpful, and welcome, Olive. And I note that Andre has joined from the previous call, and we had been hoping to hear his reflections as well. And Andre, just to bring you up to speed, what we've been hearing from people who did participate last week is that sometimes there were a really small number of participants, but even still didn't get enough discussion time during those breakout groups. That there was either low turnout, or in particular low community or civil society turnout or participation. That there were some interesting questions that were asked, and some really interesting, there was a poll by Harley about sort of 3 options in terms of thinking about the current and future mandate of the fund. as well as, operational issues that were raised within breakout groups, but that none of those really seemed to get brought back to the larger group in terms of, I guess there was a slide that was trying to wrap things up and those kinds of things. So I'm sure that I've missed some of the richness of what everybody just said, but I just wanted to give Andre as a quick update in terms of what we've covered so far. And Andre, if you had any thing that you would like to add, that would be welcome. And then I think it would be good to open it up for discussion or further comments. And I'm just sort of thinking through, how we might be able to connect with some of you about those key issues that you raised and try and find out who is sitting in which breakout groups for the African one. I'm currently in the back portal to see if I can figure that out so that we can try and share some of those key points that were made last week to those people who are making those points this week. So trying to think it through how we can help support, make all of those connections or as many of those connections as we can. But Andre, I just invite you if you did have some comments or further reflections that you'd like to share.
Thank you very much, Katie, and apologies to everyone for late joining. Just finished the board call, which got delayed. With the partnership forum, of course, the first impression, we missed this live discussion, which happened last time. So this is a challenge which was not fully overcame. At the same time, as you pointed, when I saw the results of the Menti poll, it was shocking that strategic objective 3, human rights and gender equality, was rated, the progress was rated the lowest. I was expecting that things are bad, but didn't expect that they're so bad. Because, for example, in ICA, the progress was marked with 2.3 out of 10. So it's really the lowest progress. And it was not really reflected in the following sessions or following days. So I share the concerns you already voiced, that there was no really building on that outcomes of the how participants are viewing the current progress and some key parameters for the new strategy. As for the discussion, actually, for us, it was not for ICA part I attended. It was not so bad because in many groups, civil society and community representatives were leading the discussion and were among the either note takers or also among the rapporteurs. So it was good. The important thing also that we used to have this interactive mode. So participants of smaller groups were able to review and provide comments on the drafts. So it was not like there was no disconnect. So it was very, very good contact over these days. So I appreciate the level of engagement in this. It was ended up also with a summary presented by co-facilitators, by Kevin and
Claudia.
And Claudia, exactly. While overall points were quite catchy and good, I would say, I can share some, like doubling efforts for community and civil society response, etc. It was not clear how they're linked with group discussion. So, and I think it's important also not to lose all these recommendations developed by the participants, because overall summary was like a rather top level. But we also equally need some concrete suggestions and key recommendations from each of the groups to be integrated into the summary. Overall, also another comment that we missed a little bit the joint discussion, learning from each other, because one of the opportunity of bringing two regions together, learn from each other, say on transitioning or on some KPIs programs which should be boosted and other things. So we didn't have much interaction among ourselves. So it was like two partnership forums happening in parallel, and really it's a joint one. Yeah, maybe for other two regions it will be not so evident, because it will be like focusing on Africa and MENA, which is also part of African countries, and Asia and Western Pacific and MENA, which is also part of the broader region. So yeah, I would stop here and would be happy to answer some questions if there are any.
Thanks, Andre. And I see Mick has had his hand raised for a bit of time. I'd also like to just take advantage of the fact that we have Jeff Hoover, who has been on some of these calls, and just invite him to share with us, if he's able to, and has any information about how information or results from one partnership forum is meant to be translated into the next one, in terms of either additional documentation or as part of the intros to either breakout groups which have similar topic sessions, or openings. But Jeff, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I can definitely ask that question today of the Secretariat to find out if there are plans around that, so we can watch for that for those of us who are, you know, in these second and third partnership forums. But Mick, you've had your hand raised for a while, so I did want to pass the floor to you, and then we can open it up for more discussion. So if folks did have something they wanted to ask or wanted to contribute, please just use the raise hand function or let us know in the chat.
Thank you. You know, thanks everybody for the feedback, but for me, the most important that we heard came from the final remarks of Vitaly and the remarks that Sergey made about the poor final presentation of the issues. It's not difficult. They just refuse to do it. The things that we've been asking for around a separate funding stream, human rights and gender, key populations and community engagement, criminalization, these subjects have been around, and we've been screaming for them since the whole process started. The communities delegation, the NGO delegations, different GFAN, we've all been saying it. But Kevin and the others, they don't want to put it up because it's difficult. And we're going to face this in every single one of the partnership forums. And we need to be prepared, and we need to be prepared about what we're going to do at the end of this process, because if those things don't get on the agenda, they're never going to be on the agenda. And we have to think about how we force them to listen to what we're saying. Because I think from what Vitaly and Sergey said, they simply are refusing to do it. And there is no excuse for it. And I'm sure it's going to be the same in the Africa one and the MENA one that I'm going to go to. They'll hear my voice for sure. But will it fit? I doubt if it will appear on the final summing up. And I think we really need to think about that if we're going to have any impact on this new strategy. Thanks.
Thanks, Mick. I'm seeing, sorry, trying to stay on top of different things. But Jeff, I don't know if you would, if you're able to speak to whether this is a part of what you're seeing at all in terms of the work that you're doing. Do you know how discussions have gone in terms of bringing forward information from previous partner, like from last week's partnership forum to this week's one?
I'm not sure if there's a formal process for that, but what I do know is that when they're going to try to somewhat pre-prepare the summary slide based to some extent on what was discussed at the civil society pre-meeting on Africa last week. So that's a start. That's the start of the shell. And then it will be fleshed out from what I understand based on the discussions at the main partnership forum coming up. So again, this is, and the other thing I'd like to mention while I have the floor here is that the concrete specifics that several of you have mentioned, I'm going to be preparing a final meeting report for all the partnership forums, and I'm going to, one of my main priorities is to ensure that all of the concrete things are included in that and discussed. So if you feel like you're not getting those things mentioned, you can send them to me separately, because I will have been listening in anyway, and I'll make sure that they are mentioned to the fullest extent possible in the final report. In terms of how you engage directly in the, I think Vitaly mentioned these breakout groups, during which people come together and propose some summaries on a summary slide that's then handed over. I think what's happening is that some of them slides were so extensive and so full of many stuff that so much of it got lost and wasn't able to be reflected in the final summary that they put together. So they just sort of dropped it off because it was too overwhelming. So this is just, the reason I mention that is, if there are a lot of things that you could not include on these summary slides in your breakout groups, write them down, and especially the specific things, and send them over to me separately, as well as send them onto the Global Fund Secretariat, and I'll see what I can do about getting them in the final report, and et cetera. I'll stop there for now. Thanks.
Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate what clarity you are able to provide and suggestions. So I wanted to bring us back. I don't see any other hands raised at the moment, but would invite people to.
I can't find my hand raised button.
Oh, who's that? Go ahead.
Okay. I just wanted to respond to some of the observations. So for example, because there was time difference, the EECA would have their 2 breakout sessions before Latin America and the Caribbean came on at 9 a.m. Eastern time. What I realized on the last day is that if we were up, we could have gone over to join those sessions, and then we'd have been able to get some of their experiences or comments or reflections. So for the other groups that meet, they may structure it in that way if you have time differences. So those who know that they are going could coordinate who goes into what session at what time, so that there are persons from each region joining into what the regions before had said. So then we would come on at 9, do the Latin America and the Caribbean. Then we had a plenary like that where everything came back together. I agree with Jeff about the lots of things that persons seem to think must get on paper to go. And they assured us that all of those comments, they had them, they collected them. However, each time there was a discussion, all of what was said needed to go on one slide. So the end presentation of one slide would not seem to reflect all that we wanted to say, which is normally what we get anxious about. And I kept reminding us that Harley, I think his last name is Feldom or some, I don't know it's pronounced, but Harley from the Global Fund said after our first presentation, of all the things we thought, he asks, what is the proper role of the Global Fund as it relates to the issues we are presenting? And that as we go into our discussions, we should keep asking ourselves what was the proper role of the Global Fund according to the list. So what we did was to reassure them that we recognize the power and the influence of Global Fund, and that Global Fund needed to accept that power and influence and use it because we needed them to use it, especially as we were transitioning. So some of the key things that they collected for the last day had to do with equality and gender, and how the Global Fund can help CCMs to be better, how it would become climate responsive, because one of the Global Fund reflection was that when they went fund hunting and they just spoke about HIV, TB, and malaria, there wasn't that much response until they made sure that they point out it affects the other crisis that the world was facing, whether it was the wars, the climate change, Corona, COVID, and any other epidemic that seemed to have been neglected because there was this attention that was given to these three diseases. Monitoring and evaluation was also one of the concerns. Is it the country, the region, or the Global Fund? How would the Global Fund assist with the political responsibility and accountability? And the issue of sexual identity and the inclusion and the inclusive language also came out. Because on the last day, the first day plenary didn't seem to have the amount of persons who came in for the last day. So some didn't get any of the back information, and now they had to be giving their comments on this last day when the slide was already prepared. So that was why we were assured that all of the conversation was collected. I think it's recorded as well. And so they would consider all of those, because it was now more like they were comparing to see what was the trend across all the conversations that we had before the partnership and all the conversations we are going to have in the partnership. So I am suggesting that we look at what was said before, because all of those are also uploaded into the forum space. So we could see what we had done as women, any other space. So if persons will look at it so that they can pull the key things and see if there's any gap in what they want to present based on their regions.
Thank you very much. And I think it's helpful to know that we're trying to capture all of this and share this back out in a meaningful way to the participants of the next forum. But I think a really interesting question was raised in the chat, and I'd like to see if we can get some of the colleagues who have spoken before, including yourself, Olive, but Andre, Vitaly, Sergey, Cynthia, your reflections on what were some of the key issues that you heard others raising in some of the discussions at the Partnership Forum. Can you share whether you heard some surprising things or things that would be red flags that you would want to share either from other board delegations who are represented as observers or other elements of the partnership in terms of ministry officials or private sector officials or anybody like that? So I would just like to turn that back over without putting people on the spot, but I see Sergey with his hand raised, and if I could get reflections from people who've spoken before, if they have any, that would be really helpful. And thanks, Yannick, for the question in the chat. So Sergey?
Yeah, thanks a lot for the question. I served as a rapporteur for two breakout groups, one on resource mobilization and the other on integration and systems for health. Both groups had a mix of government representatives and civil society. And it was interesting that within the breakout group on integration and health systems, there was a clear agreement between both civil society and government representatives that the role of the civil society and communities needs to be institutionalized, both as part of health systems when it comes to delivery of the services, but also as an outside force to keep the health systems accountable, equitable, and inclusive. We also discussed, well, they discussed, I really was taking notes, about the need to synchronize the healthcare reform processes with the Global Fund's investments to really make sure that whether it's the formulation of the UHC package or some of the structural changes that are happening in the country, they take into account the specific Sudanese response to overcome the parallel systems that are sometimes created, or the vertical disease responses that are not integrated into the broader health responses. On the resource mobilization, I was surprised that out of pretty much like 5 or 7 points that we articulated, most of them were about domestic resource mobilization, and very limited discussion about resource mobilization from donors to the Global Fund, which was very striking to me. And again, the group was made up of both government representatives and civil society, and everybody seems to be aligned, sort of focusing on the domestic resource mobilization side of things and how the Global Fund needs to incentivize proper preparatory steps to avoid premature transitions.
Thanks, that's really helpful. And I would just say the background paper for the resource mobilization one, which is something that I had read, doesn't even really mention donor mobilization strategies, which is amazing in the context of the Global Fund even considering a mandate expansion. It is solely focused on domestic resource mobilization. So it's no surprise the conversation might go in that direction given what the prep for it was. But sorry, I'm trying to see if anybody else has their hands raised. Vitaly, go ahead, please.
Yeah, thanks. As I mentioned in the beginning, the governmental participants were not active at all. And in one of the groups that I participated, which was delivering outcomes against HIV, there were 10 like real participants, apart from the Global Fund and interpreters and facilitators. So out of 10, 5 were from the governmental agencies, but only 1 was talking. So really, again, it was best for us, to be blunt. So we were able to push for our issues. But in those interventions that our peers from the governmental structure, they kind of agreed with everything. Like, for example, on the partnerships, they agreed with the community and civil society, decisive role in the responses, or in the delivery of HIV response. They agreed with our suggestions on emphasis on community system strengthening. So in this sense, we didn't, at least in those groups that I've been, I didn't see any contradictions whatsoever. So I'm not sure how will be with other two partnership forums. But what actually struck me also, again, as I mentioned, for me, it was not a partnership forum, it was a civil society forum in essence, and out of those governmental agencies that I saw in the participants list, they were kind of middle or lower level, like heads of PIU, implementation unit of the Ministry of Health. So they are not making any decisions in whatever in whatever role they play in the ministries. So in a sense, maybe, but somebody in our discussions, corridor discussions, said maybe there should be even pre-meetings for governmental partners, because for me, they had absolutely no idea what's going on, and they didn't read all the background documents and all the breakout groups reviews and so on. But again, just also a note for the partnership forum organizers. So, but again, yes, in some groups I heard there were not a lot of participants even for civil society. But we have to use this opportunity. Okay, we have our points, we have to push it. Yeah, it will be hard in the end for them to go but yeah, we need to use whatever we have. And maybe I have question to Jeff. Jeff, are you doing this report based on those one slides that come from the breakout groups? Or, I mean, how do we send our inputs to you directly if they won't go into the slides from the breakout groups? But maybe later. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Vitaly. I see Carolyn and Cynthia with their hands raised, and we do want to try and not abuse everybody's time. So we're going to try and wrap up this discussion here. But Carolyn and Cynthia, quick comments, and then I do want to try and wrap us up and come up with a couple of things that we're going to be asking those of you who've already participated and those of you who are going to be participating in this week's or the last partnership forum. Carolyn, then Cynthia.
Yeah, just very quickly, I am interested to hear Vitaly say that, because I didn't attend, I couldn't attend, but to have Vitaly say that the governmental representatives that in the breakout groups were very quiet, because I just saying that I heard on a call from a government representative on the strategy committee how the government representatives are getting they're not enough of them, they're getting no foregrounding, and they really are not. They need to be more prominent in the partnership forums. So I'm very interested, and I mean, I completely see it. I saw it last time. The government reps sit there, they're not high-level people, and they just sit there. They're bureaucrats, and they don't really have much input on policy, and so they don't say anything there. But this was raised that the partnership forums are unfair to government representatives. So I'm just throwing it out there.
Okay, thanks, Carolyn. Cynthia?
Yeah, just quickly, I wanted to say that from the two groups that I was in, there was one government representative in just one of the groups. And there was a lack of civil society representatives from diverse groups. So, for example, in one, there was a representative from a network of people who use drugs, and then they were asked to comment on market shaping, for example, and they were like, well, I don't feel like this is really my key area. So there was definitely a misrepresentation of civil society and other stakeholders. In my opinion, there were only 3 people in the 2 groups that I was, and I thought that was really outrageous. For the articulations between the government representatives and the other 2 people in the group, there wasn't many an agreement, but what I can say is that there was a pushback from the moderator trying to narrow down the priorities. So we listed everything that we thought was a priority, and there was a sort of insistence to narrow down, and the group said, no, we don't want to narrow down. So in the end, everything went on as it was. And just to finalize, a final comment is that from my participation in the Partnerships Forum, I don't think that this is a strategy that will end the pandemic. So there's still so much lacking in there.
Thanks, Cynthia. Yeah, and I think, well, anyways, I think that overall comment is one that some of us have been thinking for some time in terms of the approach to this strategy and where the Global Fund is. But okay, so we're just a couple of minutes before the end of the call, and my colleague Tara wanted to raise something with all of us that's a little bit off topic, but to try and not off topic, sorry, it's just on a different topic. But in terms of trying to wrap this up, what I was going to ask is, I have been taking solid notes during this call, and also, wanting to figure out who is participating from the Africa Partnership Forum, the Asia Pacific one. So if I can ask those of you who spoke today and anybody else who didn't have a chance to speak but did attend the LAC ICA one, if you could share with me by email just the top 2 or 3 points that you were trying to make, either in your breakout groups or within those slides, or in things that you had hoped to say but could not say, but would love to see somebody say in the market shaping group at the African one say, If you could share those with me by email, I'm going to send out an email now to the GFAN listserv and rely on my colleagues who I see Angela from GFAN Africa being on to see if we could come up with a short distribution list of who's attending the Africa Partnership Forum and share those notes in a smaller sort of email, so not across the whole GFAN listserv where we have many different people who are members or are active on that listserv. So that at least we can share those key points that you have or that you were trying to make. So send anything that you might have. If you had a Word document where you had thrown in a bunch of things that you wanted to say, it doesn't have to be fancy, but we'll do our best to try and match sort of some of that information. And we will try to do that as well, coming out of the Africa one, to build on that and put something forward for our colleagues who are participating in the Asia Pacific MENA 2 discussion in 2 weeks. So if I could ask those of you who did speak today or others who didn't have a chance to send that to me by email, I will pop my email into the chat so that you all have it. I'm going to pass it over to Tara, but just say that we will try to do another call. I find these very helpful. We will try to do another call where we can discuss what comes out of this one with those in particular who are trying to participate in the last one. And just know that we are also taking notes on all of these sort of operational and process issues and working towards having something that we are looking to put out as GFAN in terms of all of the feedback that we have heard around the partnership forums and how they worked and didn't work, so that they are noted for, you know, in a process way, but then also some of the broader policy type key points. So Tara, if I could just pass it over to you to raise that last issue. I apologize, there's never enough time to discuss all of things, but thank everyone who shared their thoughts today. But Tara, if I could pass it over to you to raise that last issue and wrap us up.
Yes, thank you, Katie. Just really quickly, GFAN, or the Global Fund Observer, has requested that or would like to do an article to share the voices of the GFAN network who attended the partnership forums on what they thought about the forums, what was missing, and what still needs to be done. So what we're looking for are volunteers, anyone who might be interested in participating. It would likely be for the March 10th issue, is my understanding. So what we would need input by the 1st of March. What I will do is leave this call open for a few minutes. So you can send me a note over the chat if you would like, if you're interested in sharing some things, and I can get that article set up. Or otherwise, you can send me an email. I've also put my email address in the chat, and I'll also make sure that this gets sent out maybe with Katie's email to GFAN so that we can have it's sent out to the larger group. So I'm really hoping that some of you might be able to participate, and so that we can actually have a record of some of the issues that may have been lost during the partnership forums. So thank you for that. And as Katie mentioned, we'll try to do another GFAN call in between the next 2 partnership forums. And also we do have 2 other calls coming up, which hopefully I will be sending out later this week. One launching our World TB Day stuff and introducing our new Speakers Bureau, which I'm so pleased and so excited to share with everyone. So we're just kind of getting that ball rolling. And also we'll be also, not just the Global Fund has a new strategy, GFAN does too, and we will be also sharing with you our new strategy, which has been a long time coming, and so we're looking forward to that as well. So hopefully I'll be sending out those 2 calls, information on those 2 calls this week. So thank you again to everyone who participated on the call and everyone who joined. Appreciate hearing from all of you, and I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day. Bye. And I'll leave it open. So if you want to add things in, add any notes in, if you're willing, please go ahead.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your days.
Thank you, everyone.
No, bye.
Thank you. Bye.